the woman suddenly realized there was a stranger in her home. She was blind, but she'd lived in this house for over 20 years. She could feel it, another presence in the room. She didn't dare let on that she knew. If he realized she'd noticed him, she was afraid of what he might do, so she kept her composure and went about her day, as if nothing was wrong. What she didn't know was that the man who'd broken in was just as careful as she was. He sat by the window without making a sound, as if he already knew she couldn't see. He didn't touch her. He didn't go near her. He just sat there, glancing outside every now and then. The window faced a train station, where a murder had just taken place. Police were swarming the area, and so the two of them stayed locked in this quiet standoff. Two strangers sharing a small space, in the strangest kind of arrangement, each one wary of the other. When evening came, the woman drew the curtains and went upstairs to rest. The man, starving after a full day with nothing to eat, opened the refrigerator, pulled out some bread, and ate like he hadn't eaten in days. Then he went back to his spot by the window, and slept on the floor through the night. The next morning, the woman sat alone eating breakfast. She could tell he was still there, maybe to steady her nerves. She walked to the living room and sat down at the piano. There was no one left in this house to protect her. Her family had slipped away from her, one by one. Xiaoman had lost her mother young. She just walked out one day and never came back. Xiaoman grew up with her father. In middle school, she started noticing that kids would walk past her and turn back to laugh. The moment she looked their way, they'd snap back to normal, faces blank, like nothing happened. She found out later someone had been sticking notes on her back. A prank, a joke at her expense. She locked herself in a bathroom stall and cried for a long time, replaying the laughter, picturing herself walking the halls without a clue, completely unaware. The shame of it settled into her bones. After that, she stopped trusting herself. Every time she walked down a hallway at school and heard laughter nearby, her stomach would drop. They're laughing at me again. She was always waiting to become the punchline. Then high school came, and with it, a car accident. She lost her sight. She dropped out and moved back home, back to her father. He loved her fiercely, even on nights before an early shift. He'd stay up late pressing words into a card in Braille, letter, by hand. In the morning, before he left for work, he'd tell her there was something on the table for her. Xiaoman ran her fingers across the card, word by word. Asterisk, happy birthday, Xiaoman, asterisk. Inside the box was a necklace from him. That same afternoon, the phone rang. Her father had been in an accident. She rushed to identify the body. She ran her hands over him, and his skin was cold. She knew then she was the only one left. At the funeral, a relative pulled her aside and told her they'd spotted her mother outside. She wouldn't come in. She was just standing there under an umbrella. Xiaoman made her way to the window. From nothing but a blurred memory, she tried to piece together what her mother looked like. She called out to her, loud, again and again. Her mother never answered. A train pulled into the station, and her mother was gone. In the 2 days since he'd shown up, the stranger hadn't laid a finger on her. Xiaoman started quietly testing him. While resting, she cranked the space heater up as high as it would go. She noticed that he'd risk being caught, just to sneak over and turn it down. Another time, she climbed up on a stool to reach something on a high shelf. She couldn't quite get it, and she fell. A heavy ceramic bowl came crashing down with her, and in that split second, the man lunged across the room and caught it. In that moment, something shifted inside Xiaoman. She knew, without a doubt, that he meant her no harm. He set the bowl down gently on the floor and slipped back out of the room. Xiaoman knelt there, running her fingers over the bowl, the one that should have smashed right into her face. She sat with it for a long moment. Then, quietly, she said, "Thank you." He didn't respond. She wasn't sure if he'd heard her. That evening, she cooked for two. She set the second plate across the table from her, and sat there waiting, hands folded, heart pounding. She didn't know if he'd come. Then she heard him, slow, careful footsteps moving toward the table. He sat down across from her and began to eat. A smile crossed her face. The tension between them loosened. Just a little. Something had quietly changed. Time passed. The man still hadn't left his spot by the window. Xiaoman seemed to have made her peace with his presence. She went about her life as she always had, and whenever she cooked, she left a portion for him. He always accepted it, eating as silently as he could. On the evening news, they were still covering the recent murder at the station. The suspect, the anchor said, was a man named Daisher. Slowly, it clicked. The man in her house. He was the one they were talking about. But something didn't add up. This man, who had never once hurt her, a killer? She couldn't make herself believe it. Her instincts were right. Daisher was not a bad person. He was half Japanese, half Chinese, because of things that happened at home. He'd moved to Japan with his mother in middle school. He never fit in. He didn't want to be part of any group. He just wanted to be left alone, undisturbed, in his own quiet corner. Talking to people terrified him. He was always afraid that whatever he said would be shot down, dismissed, picked apart. He'd made attempts at conversation, but afterward, he'd replay every word in his head, and cringe at himself, convinced he'd said something wrong. When he grew up, He got a job at a factory. His supervisor was the kind of man who fed on making others feel small, cracking jokes at his employees' expense, broadcasting their flaws to anyone who'd listen. He'd even brag openly about his affairs, laughing it off like it was all just a bit of fun. Daisher despised him, which meant he couldn't play along with the crowd that orbited around the guy. He kept his distance, and so his co-workers cut him out entirely. When the supervisor caught on to Daisher's attitude, he made it his mission to make Daisher's life difficult. Daisher was furious, but he never said a word to the man's face. He'd wash home after his shift, find the nearest trash can, and kick it as hard as he could. Then one morning, he spotted his supervisor at the train station. He watched him from a distance. He still doesn't fully know why he did what he did next. He circled around to the back of the platform, and moved quietly up behind him. Every humiliation came flooding back, every sneer, every put down, every year of it. As the train came barreling into the station, he reached out his hand. He wanted to push him onto the tracks. At that exact moment, the supervisor turned around, and fell. After the incident, Dashi rang the doorbell of Xiaoman's house, which was next to the platform. Xiaoman opened the door. He didn't make a sound. As Xiaoman waited at the door, he quietly walked past her and entered her home. When the police came to question, he hid in the room, afraid of being discovered by them. Days passed, and neither Dashi nor Xiaoman spoke to each other. They lived together in this unique, silent way. During this time of silence, Dashi began to reflect on his past. Xiaoman's kindness made him question the person he once was, the one who pushed everyone away. If he had been a little more open to others back then, would they have been kinder to him? Would he have felt less lonely? One day, Xiaoman's friend, Huama, took her out to buy food. Xiaoman didn't mention that she was hiding someone at home. On their way back, they got into an argument. Huama tried to convince her she needed to learn to go out on her own. What would she do if Huama wasn't there? How would she buy food? How would she have fun? Xiaoman instinctively resisted going outside. She said that if there was no food, she could just have it delivered. She didn't like going out to have fun anyway. The truth was, she had tried going out alone before, but outside, cars honked loudly at her. Bicycles didn't yield. And once, her white cane was broken by a bike. The cyclist turned around and yelled at her for blocking the way. Since then, Xiaoman never went out by herself again. Huama couldn't change her mind. With an angry "I'm done with you," she stormed off. After the fight, Xiaoman set the groceries she'd bought on the table one by one. Everyone leaves her. Her parents are gone. Even her best friend is leaving. It felt just like when classmates made fun of her as a child. She thought it was because she wasn't good enough. The more she thought about it, the sadder she became. She threw everything on the floor, sobbing as she ran upstairs. Dashi heard their argument, and the sound of things crashing to the floor. After Xiaoman went upstairs, he quietly cleaned up the spilled food, and wiped the dirty floor. The next morning, Xiaoman sat in her room, telling herself she could live alone, and being lonely wasn't a big deal. But when she went downstairs, she saw that everything had been cleaned up. She cried. That's when she realized the things she said earlier were lies she told herself. She was actually very lonely. She called Huama to apologize, but no one answered. Summoning all her courage, she decided to go to Huama's house alone, but she stood at the door for a long time, and still couldn't bring herself to leave. Just as she was about to give up and close the door, Dashi opened it, took her hand, and led her outside. They walked down the narrow street. Whenever Xiaoman felt scared, she would instinctively grab the sleeve of Dashi's shirt. When they passed an intersection, Dashi would make her stop, let bicycles pass, and tell her that two kids with a soccer ball had just run by. When they reached Huama's house, Xiaoman said to Dashi, "I don't think you're a bad person." She touched his sleeve, feeling that his shirt was thin, so she took off her own jacket and gave it to him. Then she asked him to wait for her to go inside. After making up with Huama offered to walk her home, but halfway there, Xiaoman told her she didn't need to be escorted anymore, because she wanted to try going home alone. When she got home, she stood at the door for a long time. She could tell Dashi had already left. She went to the window where Dashi used to sit, and reached out to touch it. Sure enough, it was empty. It felt like life had returned to the way it was before. That evening, she cooked only one serving of food, sat alone, and ate alone. The next day, while Xiaoman was watering the plants at the door, Dashi returned. Dashi told Xiaoman that he wasn't the murderer. The real killer was a woman. That day, just when the boss realized Dashi was there, the boss's lover suddenly rushed over, pushed the boss off the platform, and ran away. With the situation so urgent, Dashi had to run as well. The security guards only saw Dashi at the scene, so he became the suspect. The reason Dashi hid in Xiaoman's house was because he had seen that woman there before. He had a feeling she would come back, and he needed to find her to clear his name. He hadn't planned on returning, but last night, he found a photo in the pocket of the jacket Xiaoman had given him. The photo showed Xiaoman and that woman. Dashi begged Xiaoman to help him draw the woman out. Xiaoman suddenly realized, after the incident, that woman had come to her, saying she was just picking up clothes blown by the wind. In reality, she had come to confirm one thing, whether Xiaoman, the blind woman living near the station, had witnessed the truth. Once the woman confirmed that Xiaoman was blind, she was relieved. She told Xiaoman where she worked, and even took a photo with Xiaoman and Huama. In the end, the boss's lover was found, and Dashi was no longer a suspect. He came to say goodbye to Xiaoman. He told her he had been kicked out by his landlord, because even though he had been cleared of suspicion, the landlord still believed he was a bad person. Xiaoman pointed to the spot by the window.
そこ、空いてますよ。
Dashi heard this. He felt a little happy, but he didn't know how to respond. He had rarely been treated kindly in his life, and when kindness suddenly came his way, he didn't know how to handle it. Before entering, Huama had asked Dashi to encourage Xiaoman to go outside and forget about the past. Dashi wanted to say something, but he was never good with words. The words he spoke didn't even make sense to him. Then he stood up, ready to leave. Xiaoman called out to him. Together, they walked outside. Dashi suddenly stopped, turned to Xiaoman, and said, "Spring is coming, just like trees budding. Slowly, try to open your heart." Would Dashi stay?